Hello everyone, this is Jacob Byerline here from Adium Tech. Today we are going to be going over data types in Java. So data types and variables go hand in hand together, and the way that I like to think about a variable is similar to that in math. So in math we think of in algebra we have the variable x and the variable y are used to store numbers. Well, in computer science and programming we use variables in the same way. The only difference is we have different types of variables to hold different types of data, because we have more than just numbers to store. So we're going to go over several different types of data types in Java and give you guys a little bit of example. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start typing. So the first data type we're going to go over is called an integer. So we're going to type out int, int, and then we can go ahead and name our integer, my integer, and then we can go ahead and set it equal to a value, equals 5. So now it's important to know that an integer is a whole number, and in memory an integer takes up 4 bytes. So I'm placing a comment above it to remind us that an integer will take up 5 bytes of memory in our computer whenever we declare one. So the next data type that we have is called a float, or a floating point number. So we can go ahead and type float, my float, and we can set that equal to, let's go 6.54 f, semicolon. So it's important to add that f in there. That f is what distinguishes this as a floating point number. So floating point, you can just think of it as a number that contains a decimal point. Now in storage, a float also takes up 4 bytes. Next we have a double. So double, my double, is equal to, and double is a double precision floating point number, which means it can hold twice as many numbers as a float can. So the reason it can do that is because a double takes up 8 bytes in memory. So that is twice the amount of memory than a float takes. Now notice we do not include the f on a type double, we have to include it on the type float. That's how we distinguish between a float and a double, is by having this f on the end. So next up, we have what's called a Boolean. A Boolean is a value that equates to true or false. So we'll declare our Boolean and name it my Boolean, and we can set this equal to true. Now we could also set it equal to false, but those are the only two things it can take. Now a Boolean only takes up a single bit in storage. Now remember that a byte consists of 8 bits. So 1 bit is a very small amount of memory. And the reason is because computers work on binary, ones and zeros. So to represent true or false, we have an on or an off, a 1 or a 0, a true or a false. So a Boolean is one of the smallest data types in the Java programming language, because it only takes up a single bit of storage compared to, let's say, the 8 bytes of a double. So next we have a character. So we can say char equals my character, and then we can set this equal to, oops, didn't want an equal sign there, my character equals to a, or in this case q. So what we're doing here is we are storing a single letter or number or special character. This can be question mark, parentheses, asterisk, any of the above, and this takes up 2 bytes in memory. Next we have the outlier here, which is called a string. So a string, keep in mind here, string is with a capital S. So we can say string my string is equal to, and now we can say hello world. So a string is basically a sentence. It's a combination of multiple characters. Now notice here that the string has a capital S and is not orange, whereas the rest of these up here are orange. That's because a string is not a native primitive data type. It is an object, it is a class, which means that it has a bunch of other options and features and methods that the above data types don't have. This will be very useful to you in the future. So a string you can think of as an array of characters. There are multiple characters that make up this string here. So if we wanted to calculate the size, or the approximate size rather, of our string, we could take the number of characters times by the amount of bytes per character. So if one character takes up 2 bytes in memory and we have 11 characters, this string could take up to 22 bytes. So we'll find out later how we can actually find out the exact number of bytes in our string. So let's go down here and start printing out some of our variables we made. So we can do system.out.println, and we can go ahead and print out my integer. Once we run this program, we should print out the number 5, which is what we hard-coded this to be. Now we can change this to be my float. And we can go ahead and print this out. And we get 6.54, just like we entered. Or we can print out my double. And I think you guys can probably pick up on the trend now that no matter what we put here, we're going to be able to print out. And we can end this up with my string. So my string will go ahead and print out hello world, just like we coded it to. Now let's say we want to see how many bytes are inside of one of these variables. Well, we can do this thing called a byte array. So we can make a byte and make it an array. That's what these opening and closing brackets means, and we're going to name it bytes. We can say equals my string, because we're going to check the size of our string, dot get bytes. And we're getting bytes in the form of the standard character set UTF-8. So now we have an array of all of the bytes in our string. We can now take this and we can count the number of bytes in the string. So we can say int, because this is an integer, the length of an array is an integer, size equals bytes, which is the name of our array, dot length. Now we can do system.out.println, and we can print out size. This will print out the actual size in bytes of our string hello world. So notice the size here is 11, but earlier I mentioned that one way you could calculate the size of a string is by taking 2 times the length of the string. Well, hello world is 11 characters long, times 2, that would be 22, but here it says that our length is only 11. This is because the method that I proposed to you earlier gives the maximum amount of size. Some characters take more space to store than others. So this is a quick introduction into the Java data types. I hope you guys enjoyed and got a little bit of information out of this video. These are all very basic and foundational concepts needed in order to prosper in Java. So if you like this video, go ahead and like, subscribe, make sure and comment down below with suggestions for future videos, and I look forward to seeing you guys soon. Thanks.